Said property is shown on Assessor Plan 240 as Lot 2-1 and lies within an office research district. The board action in this matter has been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of this board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point, or it will be deemed waived. Who would like to present this project?
Portsmouth Regional Hospital. Because of the snowstorm, it's kind of gone a little out of order. We were before you last week for site plan review. One of those conditions of approval was the conditional use permit.
I knew I guessed wrong.
You want me to start over? Okay. So what you should have before you is a set of site plans dated December 5th, includes 3 sheets. And what I have up here is basically sheet 2, is the conditional use plan. Before we get to you folks, we were before the Conservation Commission. We met with them on November 15th as well as December 12th. And hopefully you have in your packet December 17th letter from the Conservation Commission that unanimously recommended approval with 3 stipulations. What I have here is the Portsmouth Regional Hospital, the back portion, and this heavy line, which again is on your sheet C2, that's the 100-foot buffer. This green area here, that's the existing wetlands. Basically, it's up against the existing edge of pave. So I just want to walk you through the 4 areas. As you recall, this is the emergency room drop-off area here. So this area of dark pavement right here in gray, we're adding some additional pavement in that area. And that, let me just get that number. That's about 671 square feet of additional pavement in that area. This area over here is the addition of a new mechanical room to support the building expansion. And that roof and building is about 1,659 square feet, which falls in the buffer zone. And then you recall, this is the loading dock area that is just being rotated 90 degrees, and a portion of that is in the wetland buffer zone. And that's about 3,373 square feet. And then there's a small area over here, area 4, which is some seismic columns that are about 100 square feet that are going to support the upper expansion. So, as you mentioned in the public notice, those are the 4 areas that we're looking for conditional approval. As a result of the Conservation Commission meetings, and as I said, we had 2 meetings. We've done a number of things to improve stormwater quality here. We've added 2 stormwater treatment units. There'll be 1 in this area, 1 in this area, and that's going to handle what is now untreated runoff from this area. We're going to be treating that area, and there's untreated area discharge now that we will be collecting this gray area in another stormwater quality unit. Large rain garden being constructed here, which will take the roof water from this section of the building. We've also removed an area of pavement up in here and putting in some pavers, some pervious pavers for some groundwater infiltration. We've also added about 8,000 square feet of buffer plantings, and if you look at the landscape plan, it's this area here, and all along this back edge is the additional plantings to protect the buffer zone. Bill Duffy also passed out to you folks a operation and maintenance plan for the parking lot sweeping and catch basin cleaning and the drainage structures and so forth. And again, I talked to Peter Britz late today, and he had a couple comments that we've incorporated before I got here tonight. So if you want to make that a condition of approval, that Peter, reviews this one more time, but I believe I've incorporated his comments. Going to the December 17th letter from the Conservation Commission, they had 3 stipulations. 1, that the applicant looks at other options for landscaping besides grass. And again, on the plans that you folks approved last week, sheet C, 4A, and 4B, All areas within the buffer zone, we've removed grass. It's going to be perennial planting. So that's shown on sheet C, 4A and 4B for the record. Number 2 was about the applicant investigates and adopts best management practices, has its regular sweeping, cleaning of catch basins, and considers alternatives to salt. That's what we passed out to you folks tonight, which the for Peter's review. And then number 3, that the applicant maintains and vegetates the rain garden. And again, that's a note 13 that we added to sheet 3A of that plan set. And that's that rain garden here I talked about. In accordance with your ordinance 10-608B, there's 4 conditions that have to be met for you folks to grant conditional use approval. I'll just read through those for the record. 1, the land is reasonably suited to the use and the wetland values are not adversely impacted. 2, there is no adverse impact on the wetland values of the surrounding properties. 3, the applicant shall demonstrate that alterations of the natural vegetative state or managed woodland will occur only to the extent necessary to achieve construction goals. And 4, the applicant shall demonstrate that the proposal is the alternative with the least adverse impact to areas and environments under the jurisdiction of the ordinance. What I'll say is to address all those, we're enhancing the wetlands, we're adding stormwater quality units and treatment units that haven't been there before. We're tripling the size of this rain garden. We're removing pavement within the buffer zone, and then the additional areas of pavement are all on the inside loop, if you will. There is no construction on kind of the outer limits of the ring road that currently exists around the hospital. And that really concludes my presentation.
Any questions? Ms. Hayden.
Greg, you said relative to that stipulation number 1, that landscaping besides grass, and that it was shown on sheet 4A and 4B. It's shown on the sheet 2 of the one you gave us for this, I think, as well, unless I'm just, because you have the buffer enhancement plant schedule there. So is that the same as what would be shown on 4A and 4B? Because you list out arborvitae, pussy willow, American hazelnut.
Yeah, the only difference is on the landscaping plan, the detailed landscaping plan, when there's islands here, see what's in green here?
Yep.
And green there. That got changed after these plans, because we went to the Conservation Commission after that.
Okay, all right.
So that's why we're a little bit backwards. The plans you saw last week actually have the notes that address that
Right.
any of these disturbed areas around here and here will be perennials as opposed to grass.
Right, so I see it was the sequence of how it happened. So if we
But the
approve this
plantings, I'm
tonight.
sorry, the plantings, you're correct. The plantings that are shown on this plan have been approved by the conservation. That hasn't changed.
Okay, all right,
the
so
only
we
thing
can
that's
approve
changed
this.
is grassed islands.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilor Dwyer.
The place that you pointed out, the pervious pavers, is that where you achieved the kind of 1,000-foot reduction in the impervious surface from the earlier notes? Is that the area?
Correct, there's outer limit
Okay.
here, yes,
So that was in response to the earlier?
to the Conservation Commission, yep.
I have one question. The sweeping, how often would that be? Once a month, once a year? Is there any proposal?
I believe that's in the handout.
Oh, okay. Where is it?
Once yearly spring.
Oh, once a year, okay. Any more questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak to, for, or against, please come to the podium. Second time, anyone wishing to speak to, for, or against? A third time? Seeing no one rise, I'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to indicate that the applicant has worked closely with the city and with Peter Brits on that maintenance schedule, and you're actually seeing something more detailed than we might normally have had at this point. And they reflect it reflects all of Peter's comments to date.
What's your pleasure, board?
I move that we approve this application.
Second, with steps.
with
Any
the
discussion?
3 stipulations,
Councilor
Well, the
Dwyer.
stipulations have been met.
right.
So, this is not necessarily a question about that, but it's the third stipulation about maintaining and vegetating the rain garden. Since we have such a detailed operation and maintenance plan for the other pieces, and we're starting to see rain gardens come up more often, I wonder what would be entailed in the schedule for checking what maintaining a rain garden means. I mean, what would you expect that to look like in terms of in the same way that you'd have an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater?
I talked to Peter about that today, because that was the same question. That's a great question. In the first year, obviously, there's a detailed plant with the plantings, and we want all those plantings to grow. So as part of the construction contract, the contractor has a 1-year warranty. So that gets us to the construction, and it lasts for a year after it gets installed. After that, it's really the intent of that rain garden is to, if you look, there's all those under drains in it, and there's a filter media that we just want to make sure that that drains, it doesn't get clogged, that trash is taken out of it, and it's really meant to be natural.
Right.
You don't want it to hold water. It has to filter. So that's really what you'd be looking for. You go around and make sure that it's working.
And that would be, in terms of the way we think of another schedule, that would be after the first year, every year?
Yeah, we put yearly on there.
Yearly, okay.
And Peter and I talked about that, because you're right, it is a new phenomenon,
Yeah.
and to make sure it works. But I will say that they do have, there's a small one out there now. We're replacing it. There's an existing one that sits right over here, and this is like triple in size. So the hospital has some experience with it. And Bill, they got a regular maintenance program out there.
And just in case you didn't notice it, the rain garden is listed on their operation and maintenance plan as bioretention cells.
Right.
So that is spelled out, which is nice. So we will ask for that on all future ones. That's great.
I thought I heard
Gifford.
you say that Peter Britz had a couple of additional comments on this. Is that true? Or
Well, I didn't want to speak for him. We made the revisions that he asked me to make, but I just said I don't want to, he hasn't seen that last plan.
I chatted with Peter Britz. This is exactly what we're looking for.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. We have a motion to approve with stipulations, even though the stipulations have been met. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and the chair votes aye. You have a unanimous approval.
Great, thank you.
Item C, the Portsmouth Planning Board, acting in pursuant to NHRSA 12-G13 and Chapter 400 of the Pease Development Authority Site Review Regulations, will review and make a recommendation to the Board of Directors of the Pease Development Authority regarding the following: the application of Red Hook Ale Brewery, Inc. applicant for property located at 35 Corporate Drive, wherein site review approval is requested for the construction of two 14-foot diameter, 38-foot tall RFP equalization tanks, one 12 feet in diameter, 34-foot tall digester tank, after the removal of a solids removal tank, and above and below ground piping with related paving, utilities, landscaping, drainage, and associated site improvements. Said property is shown on Assessor Plan 303 as Lot 3 and lies within the Airport Business and Commercial District. The board action in this matter is deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point, or it will be deemed waived. Who would like to speak to this application?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Corey Caldwell of MSC. I'm here tonight with Doug McNair, the production manager of the Red Hook Ale Brewery. An upgrade to the existing sewerage treatment plant at the Red Hook Ale Brewery. In your packets is a 2-sheet set of drawings. Sheet 1 shows the entire facility, the entire property, the location of the brewery, the location of all on-site wetlands, the location of the paved access ways, as well as the parking areas. To the southwest of the brewery is a sewerage pre-treatment building, and this is shown as the square on sheet 1. Sheet 2 is a blow-up of that sewerage pretreatment building. It's a 10-scale drawing showing you all the associated features with that building. We're proposing to add two 14-foot diameter, 38 feet tall equalization tanks. Now, these tanks are going into the southwest of that pretreatment building. Connected to these tanks would be an above-ground pipe fence, which connects the tanks to the existing sewerage tank. The purpose of these equalization tanks is to regulate the volume of effluent coming from the brewery into the city sewage system. Currently, during a high production time or during a water bottling event, there's a lot of effluent leaving the building and going into the city system. In low periods of time, there's a little bit of effluent, and it's not a constant level that's going into the city system. In some periods it's high, some periods it's low. The purpose of these tanks is to equalize that out so that it's a constant regulated flow. The flow comes to the tank, the underground tank shown on sheet 2. If that tank was to fill up, it then pumps additional effluent into these tanks. So again, the whole purpose is just to regulate or to equalize that flow into the city system. The second part of the proposal is the removal of a solids removal tank that's along the southerly edge of the pretreatment building, and we're proposing to replace this tank with a second digester tank. This tank is 12 feet in diameter and stands 34 feet tall. The purpose of the digester tank is to give the effluent leaving the pretreatment building a second layer of treatment. It treats it more than it currently is now. The end results of both of these tanks or these improvements means the effluent is treated to a much larger degree and the flow into the city system is regulated. Now, this proposal was approved by the Technical Advisory Committee at its December 4th, 2007 meeting. That committee approved this with 3 stipulations. Those stipulations were, 1, that all underground utilities be shown on the plan. Those utilities have been shown on sheet 2. We've added the water services, both domestic and fire, as well as the gas and the remaining underground sewer lines. The second stipulation was that a construction management and mitigation plan be prepared for review by the planning and legal departments. This plan was prepared and submitted to the city in mid-December. Third and final stipulation was that we coordinate the design and process schematics with Peter Rice of DPW, and this process has been started. Full schematic design drawings have not yet been completed, but we are in communication with Peter Rice, and once we have the full schematics, we will submit to him for review. That summarizes our proposal. Both Doug McNair and myself are here to address any questions you may have.
Councilor Dwyer.
Oh, I know in the TAC discussion, there was still an active discussion of whether 1 tank or 2, and has that been decided?
It has. We are going with the 2 tanks.
And then just a sort of a question about the whole monitoring, and maybe it's a question for city staff as well, in terms of flow into the city system. Is that something that gets reported on? What's the monitoring process for that, or the plan? How do we know this is working? What's expected from reporting, that sort of thing?
If I could, I'd suggest that perhaps Mr. Caldwell gives some indication that this project has really been developed in conjunction with the city, perhaps giving a little background there.
Yeah, it has been. And to answer your question further, yes, the city has been monitoring it, and that's why this whole project got started. They're saying to Red Hook, hey, look, guys, you're sending all this water to us one time, and then the next day it's this little bit. So they can monitor it. They know how much is coming from the facility. And really, DPW started this whole process with Red Hook.
Bring them up.
Have them come to the mic and say that.
Could you please come to the mic and say that? for the TV audience? Give your name, please.
I'm Doug McNair, I'm the plant manager for Red Hook. Just answering that question, we do have, as part of our sewer permit with the city, we fulfill a variety of data reporting rules for them. We give them flows, daily flows, composites, loading, BODs, which gives them an indication that helps them operate their primary waste treatment plant. So that's all given them, it has been since day one. And
Thank you. Ms. Gifford, did you have?
It was
You're all
about the
set?
1 versus 2.
Ms. Hayden?
I don't know whether this is a Corey question or what, but on the plan, sheet 2, in the bottom left-hand corner, it shows in a light dotted line, the optional 25-foot diameter, 20-foot tall equalization tank.
Yeah, when we submitted the drawings back in December, it was a decision to be made, and rather than just show one and not the other, we chose to show both, but the decision has been made to go with the 2 tanks. That larger tank will not be installed.
So that wouldn't be a problem to remove that from the
No,
plan?
not at all.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Rice?
Point of procedure, is visual impact something that's within the planning board purview?
Not
I
in
notice
this
we don't
instance.
get to see what any of these things look like.
Not in this instance. This is an airport business commercial district. It's an allowed use. The tanks are part of the process. So no.
Well, I guess I won't go there then.
Ms. Hayden?
I don't know whether it's a question for Corey or for staff or both, but relative to item 1 and 2, has DPW reviewed the underground utility plan and happy with it? And has staff reviewed the construction manager plan and is happy with it?
The condition on the management plan should remain outstanding.
Okay. Even though it's submitted. Okay, and how about the underground utilities?
I believe that Peter Rice is still involved looking at it. I don't foresee any problem, but by keeping that condition in place, that would ensure it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak to or against, please rise. Anyone wishing to speak to or against for the second time, for a third time? Seeing no one rise, I'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure, board? Ms. Gifford?
I move that we approve this with the 3 stipulations listed and the added stipulation that the final plan not show the alternative tank if that's not going to be used.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve with the 3 stipulations and a third and a fourth stipulation that the alternate tank not showing the final plan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the chair votes aye. You have unanimous approval.
Thank you.
Item D, the application of Aggregate Industries owner for property located at 650 Beverly Hill Road, where site review approval is requested for the installation of one 10,000-gallon above-ground storage tank for bulk storage and dispensing diesel fuel, with related paving, utilities, landscaping, drainage, and associated site improvements. Said property is shown on Assessor Plan 254 as Lot 4 and lies within the industrial district. The board action in this matter has been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or will be deemed waived. Who would like to speak to this application?
Good evening. Tim Jones. I'm a senior permitting specialist with Aggregate Industries. I work out of our Saugus, Mass. corporate office. And also with me tonight is Russell Barton, our design engineer from Wilcarks in Barton. We're here tonight just as a continuation of our permitting process to install a 10,000-gallon diesel tank, above-ground diesel tank and fueling facilities at our ready-mix concrete facility at 650 Beverly Hill Road. We had originally gotten approval at state level in August of 2007, and we included that approval with our original application. We presented our project here at the Technical Advisory Committee on December 4th, and were granted approval with 5 stipulations in their December 5th letter. On December 11th, basically, we resubmitted some additional information. I'll just touch on a couple of the subjects, and then I'll have Russell come up here and run you through the technical changes that we made on the design plans. Notably, the stipulations that I can speak to, number 2 was asked that we work in concert with the DPW and some of our neighbors over in the area to make sure that DPW Drive was received, I guess, a facelift, for lack of a better term, this coming spring. And both myself and Rick Labani, who's our ready mix concrete operations manager, our numbers are here provided in our December 11th response, and we've also both been in contact with Mr. DeFossis, and he knows how to contact us. So when that project comes about this spring, we'll be ready to pitch in and do our part to get that taken care of. Let's see. Also, number 5, it was noted that we had some material stockpiled in the buffer zone that we have since taken care of. There were some concrete blocks there that we make with extra concrete when our trucks come back to the site. Basically, we have forms when we make blocks that we sell as landscape or border type material, and we also had a couple of empty poly tanks there that we use to store admixture inside the ready mix plant. So we've since removed all of that material. Actually, we do have one piece of material left to remove from there. We're working with Pike on that. Basically, it's an old steel part of a concrete crusher. It's basically an inert piece of steel with some springs on it. Basically, it's just an old piece of aggregate processing equipment. So we'll be getting that out of there in short order, and we'll also be extending our signage through that area as well. That is also posted all along this area of our site here that makes up our stormwater management system for the site. So we'll get all those signs in the springtime and just basically let the area go fallow and keep ourselves out of that area from any storage. Additionally, from an administrative perspective, basically once we get through the approval process here, we'll also be instituting a spill prevention countermeasure and control plan at the site based on the amount of storage that we have. So that's currently in the works of being drafted by a professional engineer, and once that's prepared, we'll basically take that as our tool to the site and train our entire site staff on the fueling facilities there. And I guess I'd be remiss not to say that basically our current practice of fueling our vehicles is basically just have an off-site contractor bring their fuel truck on site and fill up all of our trucks. So basically we're looking for a little bit more efficiency and self-sufficiency to go ahead and install our own fueling island, basically just for that sole purpose of fueling our ready-mix trucks. And in addition, a couple other parts of the permitting process that we'll have to undertake is registering the tank once it was installed with the state and also with the city itself. So without further ado, I'll let Russell come up here and touch on some of the other technical subjects and then take any questions you may have.
Good evening. My name is Russ Barton. We prepared the design plans for the installation of a 10,000-gallon diesel fuel tank. Tim had mentioned that there were some items that I dealt with directly. Those items would be, number 1, the applicant shall provide specifications on lighting, on-site lighting to David for the review and approval. Included in the submittal was a detailed a description of the light, the respective wattage, the bulb construction, and a kind of spray, if you will, configuration of the light that would be installed right above the fueling dispenser and the console. The other item that we were discussing was item 3. The applicant shall research the need for a lightning rod and report back to Thomas Cravens right after the technical advisory committee meeting. Sorry, we walked up and had a discussion with Mr. Cravens, and we reviewed the plans together, and we decided that the grounding system that was installed as part of the original design was adequate, and that met his needs. The other item 4 represents a comment being added to the plan. That's right on sheet 1 of 4, and there was a comment installation of a spill kit in the adjacent shed next to the fueling station. And that comment was added to the plans, and that comment reads that existing pump shed shall be equipped with a spill cleanup kit. The content shall be listed in the SPCC plan. That's the spill prevention, countermeasure, and control plan that Tim mentioned. So I feel confident that we've addressed the issues that came up during the technical advisory committee meeting. And I don't know if we want to go through a discussion of the system, or if you'd rather just ask some questions. I'd leave that up to you. I'd be comfortable talking about it in detail, or we can just field some
Just
questions.
ask questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just do questions.
great.
Assuming there are some. Ms. Robertson?
Yes, at the Technical Advisory Committee meeting on December 4th, there was some discussion about an alarm, and so I was wondering what the status of that was. It was sort of pointed out that if there was an alarm on site and it went off, there wouldn't be anyone there, for instance, at night to address that. So I didn't know if any changes had been made relative to an alarm.
I don't believe that right now the system hasn't been designed to make an off-site notification. Is it a 24-hour? No. A catastrophic release would result in an alarm after hours that no one would be on the site present for.
And I think that was the concern at TAC, and you were going to address that. The idea that there was an alarm that nobody could respond to is exactly what that comment was made to, and I think you were going to come back with a proposal on that.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood that.
Right, specifically to connect to a remote location where somebody would actually be there and be able to address whatever was actually going on.
Okay. It's certainly, from a technical standpoint, it's doable. It's an upgrade of the monitoring system. It has basically a fax component to it, and it can send alarm history to a designated location. So very, very much doable. Absolutely. The components are designed to be upgraded in that fashion.
So basically, I am the company emergency response contact anyway, so when we get our spill...
Will you please come to the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. When we get our spill plan together, I am actually the company's emergency contact person, and basically we have a well-developed set of procedures in terms of, so we basically, what we'll do is have some sort of telephone communication put in. We actually have a 1-800 number that we have, someone can call and it routes the number to me or any of my alternates in any given occasion and so forth. So we'll make sure that that is implemented.
Ms. Hayden?
Relative to this, what was stipulation number 5 on posting the wetland buffer so that, well, it actually doesn't talk about posting. It says removing what's stored in it, but I understood you to say you were going to post it as a natural area.
Correct.
Is the wetlands buffer shown on the plan? I mean, I see an area that says ponded and marsh area, but is the actual wetlands buffer shown?
No, we don't have it. No.
Okay. And I don't necessarily feel like we need to show it on the plan, but I guess if it was agreeable to the applicant, I would like to add a little bit to that stipulation number 5, that posting of that area take place in cooperation with the city's environmental planner, just so we make sure we're posting the right place, because we're trying to achieve keeping future storage out. So just to work with us on doing that. Is that agreeable?
Sure, and actually, you know, I have a recent example of doing that actually in the city of Stoughton, where we worked with the city and used their brass flush mount markers or whatever. So we're, you know, happy to work with your agent, and if you have something we can purchase and install, or if you're comfortable with what we have.
Well, and it's more placement. I'm thinking more
Sure,
of the placement and make sure our environmental planner is in agreement on what you're proposing to post. That'd be great.
Not a problem.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak to, for, or against, please come to the podium. Anyone wishing to speak to, for, or against for the second time? For a third time? Seeing no one rise, I'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure, board?
I would make a motion to approve with the added stipulation number 6 that the applicant address the issue of 24/7 response to an alarm in some off-site manner, and to amend stipulation number 5 to include that the locations of, well, it doesn't say, stipulation 5 doesn't say that the applicant has to post the wetlands buffer, so we'll expand that to say they have to post the wetlands buffer, and that location of those postings should be at the approval of the environmental planner, city's environmental planner.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? We have a motion to approve with the 5 original stipulations and 2 additional stipulations, one being the alarm is connected 24/7, so it can be responded to promptly, and a stipulation that the wetland is posted in conjunction with the city's environmental planner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, chair votes aye. You have unanimous approval.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I would just mention to the board and also to the applicant, they've actually made a request to amend this site plan. Staff has met with personnel from DPW. We believe it to be a minor amendment, but we believe it should go through a public hearing process, and they should meet in a pre-TAC with staff to make sure there's no great issue arising from it. But I would just indicate to you that you might well see an amended site plan to allow an additional structure on the property at your February meeting. And you can coordinate with me if you want tomorrow, so I can formalize that with you. That's the temporary structure where the pavement's going to be stored. I'll share my correspondence with you.
Oh, okay.
David, does that have to go back through TAC or just
Yes.
pre-TAC? Full
Just
TAC?
pre-TAC.
Just pre-TAC, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can contact me tomorrow, or why don't you open up the next one?
Item 3, City Council referrals requests. A, request of Public Service Company of New Hampshire for an easement to relocate electrical switchgear at the intersection of Maplewood Avenue and Hanover Street. The board action in this matter has been deemed to be legislative in nature, and if any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or will be deemed waived.
This is a council referral, and it has to do with placing an equipment switching station on city property. Michael Coffey from Psnh is here to address any questions the board has, and he's giving out more details. Dave Allen is here from DPW, who has also taken a look at the review of it. Frankly, at this point, given the staff input and Mr. Coffey's cooperation, we've reduced the original request down to the minimum necessary to accomplish the purpose of serving the electrical needs in this growing area. We've also worked with them and with Lucy so that an existing tree is being preserved. So frankly, I think the 3 recommendations that we've made largely cover it, but you might want to get a little more detail from whoever you deem appropriate. And I'd also add that a little later in the agenda, we're going to deal with something similar to this. Because it's an easement and because it's city property, your opinion and your recommendation is needed. But at this point, the department is recommending it based with the conditions that we've provided, and we have additional staff and the applicant here if you have any questions.
Thank you. David said it well. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mike Coffey. I work for Public Service Company of New Hampshire. And as David mentioned, we are in the process of upgrading our electrical system in the urban renewal area. The system that is there was placed in 1970. And because of the development that's taken place in that area, we need to upgrade our system. The system is going to be impacted partially by development that's going to be coming forth here very shortly, the Port Walk development. And we need to remove all the underground infrastructure that borders the development on the Maplewood Ave and the Hanover Street side. We have some manholes that are next to that property that has equipment in it. We need to remove that. And it is at the age where the technology is old, and the new technology doesn't allow us to put that stuff in a manhole in this day and age. So we're seeking easement rights on a piece of property. It's the Bridge Street lot, corner of Maplewood and Hanover Street. It's approximately 10 by 25-foot easement. There'll be the placement of a manhole on that property and a piece of switchgear. The first photo in your packet there shows the easement area. This is an existing site. You'll see in photo 2, it's a small area that was an attempt to put a pedestrian seating area. I'm not sure how much it's utilized. So the manhole and the switch will go in that location. I have talked to Dave, Lucy, and David Allen on this, and the easement area would be placed so that it had the least impact on that area. The third photo shows a switch that we placed at the Hilton Garden Inn, and it's approximately 74 inches wide, 84 inches deep, and about 50 inches high. We do have one of these there that is now screened behind fencing, so you really can't see it. But we do have another one that is at a piece of property at 157 Deer Street, if you chose to see that. Public service, there will be no impact on city services. Public service, this will be totally at public service expense. We'll negotiate the easement rights with the city. So the city, because of this location, they won't be impacted by loss of revenue in taxes. And a public service company will, by easement rights, will maintain the property. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Dwyer.
This, preface my question by saying that, this area will soon probably be as important to our city as Market Square is. It will take a lot of traffic. With the Port Walk development, it will be a focal point. And so, not knowing a lot about electrical switch work, I spent a little time this afternoon trying to do some reading, and I see that other cities are placing this type of thing in vaults that are underground. And if any area in our city warrants not sticking a big ugly box, however painted it is or whatever, right in the middle of where, we're going to have stacked traffic,
Right.
et cetera.
Yeah.
We know we can go underground there because we're going 2 stories underground across the street for a garage. So it has, I have real trouble understanding why we're not doing that here.
There's a number of reasons. 2 of the major reasons is because of OSHA requirements, because of enclosed space requirements. These are things, procedures that are put in place by OSHA and the National Safety Code and Public Service of New Hampshire, which is in part Northeast Utilities. The safety practices that we have do not allow the workmen to go into those spaces. The existing manholes are, the equipment is oil-filled equipment that we do not put underground anymore because of the environmental hazard. If there should happen to be a problem in one of those manholes today, we would have to de-energize the entire system, which would de-energize most of the city of Portsmouth. So the new equipment is above ground equipment. They access it without the restrictions of all the appropriate equipment that they would have to use to go underground. It's very time saving. The reliability of the equipment is much better, and service can be restored at a much quicker time.
So the other cities that are doing this,
well,
and the equipment
I
that's
know
being
they do
sold
this
internationally is.
No, it's a lot of it is based on the company's practice. But if you read the newspaper, you'll hear in Boston or New York or Chicago, they'll have a catastrophic failure in a manhole, and most of the time there's loss of life. Because when the men get in the manhole and something happens, they can't get out. So we do not do that. We protect our employees by having the type of equipment that is very safe. It's above ground, has no oil in it. It's filled with an FS6 gas. It's an inert gas, environmentally safe, and it has no arc flash level to it, so it's not going to explode. It's very safe to the environment, very safe to the employee. So we choose not to do that. It's not something we want to employ. Yeah. One of the things we do though, and we worked with another property owner, and we're working with the city now, the HDC, we will screen the device. I mean, we have provisions to screen the device so, you know, it sort of conceals it enough so that people don't, it's not obvious. But we've found that once the device is there and after a short period of time, people don't even notice it. It's not something that, it's not something like a dumpster, you know, it doesn't have odor, doesn't have noise, perfectly safe, fully grounded. So once it's there, it's sitting there. They're green, like I think you've seen Transformers, they're green, and they blend in. But we will talk and negotiate with screening the device so it impedes that aesthetic thing.
Ms. Gafford.
Thank you. Actually, I'm wondering whether there's any possibility for there to be an art space on the transformer box.
Art space?
Yeah. I mean, isn't it possible to do a couple of things? One is to have the exterior essentially be a framed something so that announcements for the city, or I know that they're looking, or they were looking in the capital improvement plan for directionals for, you know, pointing you to downtown, that you have signage, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
That's one option. Another option is to actually have local artists have the ability to slide in or paint on the exterior some sort of art.
Yep.
And so rather than screening it, I would actually like to see it used and useful for the city.
And that's a great idea. We would be willing to sit and talk with the city, whoever that might be, and come up with some sort of a screening or some sort of a plan that we could place something around the device. One of the stipulations that I can see would be that it would have to be something that is removable, because we have to access, the doors on the device are quite large, and we have to access the device only in an emergency. I mean, normally it sits there and it doesn't do, you know, you wouldn't have to bother with it, but in the event of emergency, we'd have to access the device, so whatever's there, we would have to be able to move. But I would be very willing to sit down and negotiate something along those lines.
Mr. Rice.
I would just comment on, it goes back to the previous board that I was on. We approved the Whalen Wall, and I was the lone Carmagen in that, or one of them. I did not like that idea, and the reason why was I could foresee graffiti happening to it and deterioration happening to it, and we all know what happened. I think that screening is sufficient, but I think it's a nice thought to have artwork there, but it just invites trouble, graffiti, and that kind of thing, which then calls attention to this box even more. Yes, I mean, sorry. Back to my chairman days.
Councilor Dwyer.
Sorry.
I think architecturally, though, you could handle a number of these things. I mean, the problem with the Wailing Wall was you know, as my father told me, it's 98% preparation, 2% painting, right? So, I mean, we shouldn't use that. We shouldn't generalize from poor preparation of a surface that that's a problem. But I would also say, you know, as somebody who's worked a lot with public art is what it is. And so graffiti is part of it if it happens. But I think there are other architectural options to deal with that if it's not art, signage. We don't worry about not putting up signs in the city because someone might spray paint them.
I like the signage thing.
Ms. Hayden.
Well, I think we should, I mean, I understand what you're saying, John. I think we should also keep in mind, it might, I don't know, I won't presume what the function of the top of the cabinet is, but maybe a sculpture could go on top. I mean, so there are other things besides. I mean, I was thinking graffiti, I was having the same thoughts you were. But I think, you know, if we add the stipulation that the applicant work with ArtSpeak and city staff, we will address the aesthetic component a little bit better and also address, the long-term maintenance and that kind of thing.
It also needs to go to the HDC.
And it's going to the HDC anyway.
Yeah, there's certain things we have to abide by with the National Safety Code, and as I say, we would have to sit down and talk about what the options were. One thing we don't want to do is create a haven for somebody to hide behind. We found that once we put fences around them, people that are looking for places to get out of the weather or whatever, they get behind those screenings, and they're there. So that, even with foliage that is quite dense, you don't want to, but we found that just a little bit of something is enough to break up the features of the device. So, any other questions?
Thank you. What's the pleasure, board? I think we need a motion to whether we want to recommend this to the council for easement.
Well, to grant the easement with coming to terms with a negotiated
I'm not
plan.
making a proposal, or I'm not making a motion. Somebody
You
has
can
to make
add a
motion.
stipulation.
Well, adding the stipulation that there would be mutual agreement with city staff on an appropriate aesthetic plan for the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that motion includes the 3 recommendations?
Right.
Okay.
Is that a motion? If it is, I'll second it.
We have a motion to recommend to the council with some sort of working arrangement to work on the aesthetics and the 3 recommendations listed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and chair votes aye.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you take Dave Allen with you when you leave?
Item 4, new business. A, notification of intent to subdivide property located at 192-194 Raleigh Way, Atlantic Heights, per Article 3, Section 10-301-A, 4 of the zoning ordinance.
Yep.
The board action in this matter has been deemed to be legislative in nature. If any person believes that any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or will be deemed waived.
Mr. Chairman, I'd indicate to you this is a reaffirmation of a subdivision that was shown on the original plan for Atlantic Heights. And pursuant to the zoning ordinance, we need to make you aware of that, and that's all that is required. So I would ask you that you place this on file.
Do we need a motion to place it on file?
Sure.
So moved. Place on file.
Second.
Second.
A motion to place this on file. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, chair votes aye. To the file, it gets placed. Item 5, amended site plan review. A, 400 Gosling Road, PSNH warehouse utility revision. David?
Yes, in the development of the site plan, it's actually under construction. There was a need to reorient how a utility connection connected to the right-of-way. DPW reviewed it, recommends it as a minor change, and the department concurs, so we're just informing you that this change has been authorized.
Any questions? No questions. Item B, 1,800 Woodbury Avenue, Gerber Dental, move dumpster location and convert 2 parking spaces to porous pavement.
I won't indicate to you how long this item has been on, but I think it's almost 2+ years. The issue was, at one point, the site plan did not match what was actually constructed. The department and the applicant actually have worked, I won't say diligently, but we've been pretty persistent at any rate. And what we've worked out is a proposed dumpster location and converting 2 parking spaces to porous pavement, and that met the requirements of the Conservation Commission, and we viewed it as a minor change to the site plan and does not require any action on the part of any board. And at one point, we thought we might have a board action. So I'm indicating to you, we've approved it as a minor site plan. We'll just ask you to take recognition of it.
Thank you. Want to do this or the planning board schedule?
Why don't we do this, because Suzanne is
Right.
here for that. Do you want me?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, board members should be aware, we placed at your location 2 sets of plans, easement plans, and they deal with the Bartlett Street, Islington Street sewer separation project. and also the Route 33 Railroad Replacement Project. The reason we've brought these to you is twofold. One, some board members will recall, if you've been on for any length of time, that both of these were CIP projects. And you would also recognize that they've come off of the capital plan because the projects are actually being implemented or coming in under construction. Because both projects require some easements in right-of-way and property interests, the planning board basically is being asked to affirm that these are necessary and to so recommend to the council. These memos have been prepared because they're time sensitive so that you get a sense of what it is. And also Attorney Suzanne Woodland is here to address any particular details. But my message to you is these are both capital improvement plans, projects that are being implemented. They were in the plan for many years but haven't been in the last two because they've been underway. And two, most of our site plan reviews, for example, on Islington and Bartlett, have addressed the need for the work on the brick box sewer. So we've known that this was coming along. Well, now we've got more of the details because the planning has reached to a certain point, and now we're looking for your concurrence on the easement and the right-of-way acquisition. And with that, I'd suggest you open it to Suzanne to give a little more background on it, but I'm trying to alert you that you should be familiar with both of these projects.
Good evening. Do you have a preference? We could start with the Bartlett Islington Street project if you'd like. This is one of our sewer separation projects that we need to accomplish as part of some work that the city needs to do. As Dave Holden indicated, this is a project you've seen before, and in fact the City Council has actually seen a summary of this project before. We did actually have a hearing back in August of 2007 where we talked about some of the property rights we needed to acquire. So this is in some ways really a housekeeping measure to get your, we hope, approval before we go to the City Council one more time. With the exception of the railroad, we've had good conversations with the affected property owners and anticipate coming to agreement with those few that we've not quite finished working on the easements. So what I'll do is I'll just let you ask questions if you'd like.
Any questions, Ward? Your presentation was eloquent.
As
Answered
were
all the
materials.
questions, as were the materials.
Why don't you explain what the action would be that you'd be looking at? It's sort of on the second page. The planning board recommends to the city council to transfer the property interest as identified in attachment A.
That would be correct.
For the Islington Bartlett Street. That does everything we're looking for.
The same then.
Take these separately?
Yes.
If there are no questions, do we have a motion?
I'll move that we recommended the City Council transfer the property interest as identified in the attached Exhibit A to the memo from Suzanne Woodland of January 17th regarding the Bartlett Islington Street Sewer Separation Project.
Do we have a second?
I'll second whatever she said.
I have a motion and a second to, and I won't read it all. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, and chair votes aye. Unanimously approved to move it to the council.
Just a question. You mentioned that everything but the railroad is essentially in agreement process or whatever.
Correct.
Where is the railroad?
We have commenced the takings proceedings.
Okay.
So we expect to complete those hopefully within the next about 60 days.
Okay.
Also, as a little bit of historical background and information, because Frank Jones controlled the B&M Railroad, and because Frank Jones controlled the brewery, because Frank Jones needed a way to get his effluent out, the brick box sewer was actually constructed by him. And because he owned the B&M, no easements were ever done. So 100 years later, we're dealing still with that problem because he controlled the whole thing.
That was my question.
Yeah.
A little piece of real ancient history.
Interesting. Because you would assume there would be some easement there, and so it'd be trading A for B maybe.
Yes, and there isn't.
Matter of fact, most of the B&M right-of-way in many places is not even done by an easement, which raises other problems in other parts of the city.
Perhaps the statue of Frank Jones on the electrical switch box.
Right.
So the next piece of work, if you'd like, I'll just summarize the other project. This is another railroad project, Route 33, Greenland Road. We are in the process, we hope soon, to begin bridge replacement. That bridge is in very sad shape. It's only 2 out of 100 on the scale of structural integrity, so to speak. So it's high on our list of work to do. And again, this is housekeeping in many ways. The City Council has already seen this project once in terms of a public hearing to establish a takings. Again, should we need to go that route, because again, we have railroad property involved. The principal takings that, not takings, but principal property interests that we need relate to the right-of-way. We need to expand the right-of-way in some locations. So we're looking at slope easements, right-of-way easements, and then some drainage easements, which are spelled out on the Exhibit A to that second memorandum. Again, we've had conversations with property owners for quite some time now. We are getting appraisal reports in to help give us a better idea of some of the compensation issues we may be looking at down the road, but right now we've been talking, and what we want to do is be in a position by coming to you now and getting your recommendation to go forward to the City Council so that we can continue to move this process forward. We are hoping to get started, spring.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion. I did so well before.
You did.
I make a motion, the planning board recommended City Council the acceptance of easements as identified in Exhibit A, attached to the memo from Suzanne Woodland dated January 24th with regard to Route 33 Railroad Bridge Replacement Property Acquisitions.
Second.
We have a motion to recommend to the council. That's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The chair votes aye. It's approved.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you. Six, miscellaneous. A, planning board schedule.
Mr. Chairman, we've given you some various materials. These also include requests from various parties that have business before the board, specifically the Kane Development Company in regards to the expansion of Commerce Way, and also, excuse me, what I would call Borthwick Forest, where they are working with the board on a rezoning. Peter Britz has been aware of these requests, and he basically brought these to the Conservation Commission, and we have a brief memo coming back to him, which is what it essentially is saying is the Conservation Commission would enjoy an opportunity, rather than reviewing these separately and making a recommendation, that if the board is going to hold a joint work session, that it be a work session, that it be a joint one with the Conservation Commission, subject to you picking a date. So what you have is a number of requests, and I'd also indicate to you that the city's consultant, Rick Tainter, is indicating that on February 7th that we'd like to do a work session with you on the draft site review criteria. February 14th is technically available. February 21st, which is your regular meeting, theoretically you could perhaps do some time before the meeting. February 28th is presently open, and then March 6th and the 13th we'll be looking to work with you in work sessions on the draft zoning ordinance. So I guess what staff is looking for from you is an indication of how you would like to schedule these and when you would like to schedule these.
Ms. Hayden.
So David, the three work sessions we're really trying to fit in are one, Borthwick Village, 2, the joint work session with the Conservation Commission, and then 3, the Atlantic Heights request regarding the Conservation Overlay District. Yeah, I mean, I think we should definitely do the site review on February 7th. I think we should move forward with the Borthwick Forest and decide what we're going to do with that. I guess I'd like to propose that we do that on February 14th. And I feel like the Atlantic Heights group has, been requesting to talk with us for quite some time. I'm wondering if we could invite them to come in at 6 to 7 before our regular meeting on the 21st of February. And then maybe look at doing the joint with the Conservation Commission on the February 28th on the Kane request. That's the Commerce Way one, right, David?
Yes.
Yep. That's my thoughts.
That sounds like a good plan. Just a comment that I know February 7th is the public hearing on the police budget, so I don't know if that's a television problem.
That television problem has been anticipated and taken care of. They're going to move their budget work session to 6 p.m., and they said they'll be out of here by 7.
Okay.
So.
Any other comments from board? I think that's a good schedule. Borthwick, we've had, I think, 3 meetings already, and we owe them a final meeting, make a decision on that, and then the rest of it seems to fit in well, from my point of view. So,
Would you like an official motion on that, board, or does any?
Yep, I'll go over it with you if you'd like. February 7th, you'll be meeting on the draft site plan review with the city's consultant. February 14th, we'd invite Borthwick Forest to come in and make their presentation to us. That would be a one agenda item. February 21st, prior to the start of the meeting, we'll meet with Atlantic Heights. And February 28th, which would be a one agenda item on Commerce Way.
And that would be a joint with the Concom?
Correct.
Yep.
Sorry.
If I could just clarify, David, on Borthwick on February 14th, are we talking about that being a work session or a public meeting? And do we really need to have them present again, although we may have some new faces that didn't hear the first several presentations, or is that really a discussion for the board?
I thought it was primarily a discussion with the board. I would assume the applicant would be interested and would be seeking to have comment. Perhaps a limited comment would be available, but we know the neighborhood's interested, so they're going to want the same thing.
So we'd want a public
Theoretically,
meeting,
you've done
and
it.
let people speak. I mean, my feeling is we should be sitting up here for that meeting and having a discussion rather than the work session format, which sometimes gets a little more informal and I think might not be as productive on this at this point in time.
And I'm assuming you're talking about including within that an opportunity for the applicant to present, because we left them with a lot of options to make some changes for us.
Right.
I think,
Yeah, I'll be right.
just recall that if we do that, we need to also let the neighborhood be able to make a brief. So what you may
Yes.
want to do is schedule very limited time, or at least make it clear that you're going to entertain limited.
And I believe that regarding the discussion about Borthwick Forest, we had asked them for various pieces of information. So I wonder whether there's any way when they provide that information to us, hopefully before the meeting, that they could also provide that somehow to some of the neighborhood folks.
Why don't we request that if they want to provide you with anything, that we get it in advance of that meeting, and that'll be a
Right.
file. And we'll let everyone know by an abutter notice that there's
Exactly.
going to be a discussion on that with perhaps limited discussion, an opportunity for limited discussion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just
yes.
as one follow-up, David, relative to Atlantic Heights, that we'll invite the co-chairs of the neighborhood association and whoever they so choose to bring.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'll go over that with you to make sure we got the right name.
Right. Yep.
Good, we're all set?
I think so. We got a consensus of the board.
So you want to review
The only
that?
thing I'd like to tell you, well, basically every Thursday in February you're meeting.
And March isn't looking too good either.
We're not meeting next week, though.
We'll send out a new schedule
Yes.
soon.
At the 21st, we're meeting early.
21st will be.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. 28th will
Take
be
that page?
7 o'clock.
6 o'clock?
Yeah, I can try. Yeah, I'll just work longer.
What
the other
we've
day.
also done is we've set off 6:30 to 7:30 and then started the regular meeting, if that would help.
That would help.
Let's do that.
Okay, we'll start it at 6:30. The regular meeting will start at 7:30.
6:30 on the 21st?
Yeah. All the others are 7 o'clock.
Okay, item B is the Commerce Way Master Plan. Is that, we've just covered that?
We just covered that.
That'll take place on February 28th.
Correct.
At a work session. These information items, should I read them into?
I think you've handled them. If you want to just indicate we've looked at them, that's fine.
Okay, we have 3 informational items, a letter from Michael Kane regarding the Commerce Way expansion, a letter from Atlantic Heights neighborhood, which we just set up the meeting, and a letter from the Hodgkins Brook Restoration Project relating to wetlands buffer protection. And with that, I think we're done. If we have a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second?
We handled that by doing the joint meeting.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
I assume everybody votes yes, so we're adjourned.
Thank you much.
Right.